We're getting ready for our third session for today. And in case you missed it, our third session today, once again, another crucial one: identifying, quantifying, and monitoring value in the creative economy. One of the reasons this is important, y'all, when you look at the real GDP of Trinidad and Tobago, in terms of the creative industries, on paper, we contribute less than 1% towards the economy, on paper. Now, this session will help us in understanding, calculating, evaluating, and of course, monitoring how we contribute as a sector. So let's get ready for this one. Session number 3, where we welcome Eliana Prada, Sector Specialist in Innovation at the Inter-American Development Bank. Kevin Valley, Chartered Business Valuator, Consultant, and Podcaster. Gerard Thomas, he's Head of Innovation at Agostini Limited and founder of Launch Rocket. We also have Mark Pereira, Blockchain Technology Specialist. And for this particular session, we welcome moderator Laura-Dowrich-Phillips, who over the years has contributed so much in terms of journalism in Trinidad and Tobago, digital content, and of course, she's also editor at Loop TT. Again, we remind you to direct your questions to the question and answer box to the right of the screen. Laura, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to session 3. We will start with a presentation from Eliana Prada from the IADB. Eliana?
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone. And good morning to all of my fellow panelists and everyone in the audience. So let me start by sharing my screen, if you allow me to. Let me see. Just 1 second. Okay. All right. Can you confirm if you can see that?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so good morning again, everyone. My name, as I was just said, is Eliana Prada. I'm a sector specialist at the IDB, and I will be sharing with you the role of the orange economy, as we call here at the IDB, the creative economy, in the recovery, the economic recovery of our region in a post-pandemic era. So let me give you just a brief framework of what we're going to be talking about. You know that the region, Latin America and the Caribbean, has faced one of the greatest challenges in its history because of COVID-19. And this meant the loss of 36 million jobs. And this represented that 44 million people were pushed back to poverty. These figures were really alarming to the IDB. And thinking about how we could recover and step in for the region in this economic recovery, economic and social recovery for the future, we proposed a vision which we called the 2025 vision, based on 5 axes or pillars. And these are going to be guiding all of our work towards 2025. The first one is the regional integration. The second one is the support to the digital economy. The third is the support to MSCs. The fourth is the action against climate change, which we continue to do at the IDB since its beginning. And then gender and diversity and securing this equality in gender and diversity. So let me begin now. Let's jump right onto it. What is the orange economy? What do we mean by that? And what does a multilateral development organization such as the IDB have to do with orange economy, with creative economy? Why are we interested in that? And we see that these 5 pillars that I just mentioned are at the heart of the orange economy. And you may wonder why, right? And this is because they generate employment, wealth, and social impact. And this is exactly what we need now in a post-pandemic era. We know that the orange economy generates wealth, creates jobs, and generates social impact. We know that the creative economy is very intensive in the generation of employment, but not only just any employment, any job, specifically those jobs that are very intense in the use of talent and therefore are quality jobs. Now, let me just briefly tell you what we do at the IDB in terms of orange economy. We base all of our work in 4, let's say, actions, right? First, we generate knowledge and awareness. It's very important to educate everyone about what the creative economy is, what the impact of the creative industries for development is. So we do a lot of research and publications that I will be really happy to share with you after this presentation. Second, we strengthen the creative ecosystem. So we do a lot of mapping of who the main key actors are in the creative ecosystem. We reach out to them. We connect and we network countries and different regions, even from everywhere in the world, with bringing best practices, for instance, from the UK to Trinidad and Tobago. So we have a robust creative ecosystem that we're really proud to work with. On the third place, what we do is we do all this research to influence public policy and regulations. So for instance, in 2021, we did our first policy regional dialogue on the creative and cultural industry with an intersectorial approach. That was a really important landmark for us, and that we will continue to work towards 2021. And the fourth one is data generation. We do a lot of work to find out, with data, hard data, about the impact of the creative economy on development. So talking about data, right? So we have data about a little bit old, about let's say this one in particular. You'll see the contribution of the creative sector to GDP. This dates from 2015, but it's just a reference for us to know. And let me take the UK, for instance, as an example. You see how much they invest on the creative economy and how much that impacts their GDP. And this is just to give us an idea of how Latin America and the Caribbean could grow if we could only invest, much more on the creative economy. And then, talking about data, I would like to share this particular data, which is about the Caribbean, and this one about Trinidad and Tobago. We have a lot of data that shows the relationship between culture and tourism, right? And tourism and carnivals and festivals are huge in the Caribbean, right? So we see that this relation and the importance of the creative and cultural content when choosing a destination and therefore impacting tourism. And we see that for some countries, tourism represents 70% of their economy, and cultural tourism represents 40% of this sector's income. In particular, in Trinidad and Tobago, I have it right here in front of me, Trinidad and Tobago alone attracts, I'm sorry, I just have it there, attracts more than 30,000 foreign visitors in 2 days of celebration. And that generates revenues of $60 million. So the economic spillover of carnivals and festivals it's tremendous, and it's really huge. So again, talking about data, publications, and the work that we do, we have a lot of different publications that we've been doing since 2013 until now. All of them have to do with, the impact of the orange economy on development, and also on the profile of economic, orange economic entrepreneurs, and the intersection also of creative economy and digitalization. So all of these I'll be happy to share with you right afterwards. One of the studies that we've done talks about the profile of of creative entrepreneurs. So I'm gonna tell you just 3 facts about them. That the one is that their age is about 35 years old, that they are usually, they don't have specific education, they are self-learned, and that they're usually women. Most of the creative entrepreneurs are women. There's a huge opportunity there. So you can see that among the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, they're mostly men, but if we talk about creative entrepreneurship, it's mostly women, okay? So I also want to share this with you because I think it's a huge opportunity for the Caribbean as well. The fastest growing creative sectors among the orange economy are video games. Only in Latin America, it's the second highest, it has the second highest annual growth rate in the world. Then comes audiovisual and then music. So these are the 3 top sectors that also the Caribbean could be thinking about. And we have an opportunity here, a huge opportunity to change, to make a shift from consumers of content to content creators. So just briefly, let's talk about the main challenges that we see in the creative economy, and that's job instability, digitalization, and we've been seeing this throughout the pandemic mostly, and the new business models that have to, that came up because of COVID-19. Access to financing, we see that all the time. And then a narrative, the need to have a unified narrative for the creative sector. So those are the main challenges and something that we could be thinking about. So one thought that I would like you to keep and stick to is that the orange economy creates jobs. It creates almost 2 million jobs in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this is a huge, unused, untapped potential for a region to dwell in. That's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eliana, for that insightful information. It's really good to get an idea of what's happening in Latin America and the Caribbean. I had no idea that video games were the fastest growing area in the creative economy. So that is very interesting to know. Definitely opens up some ideas for possibilities within our own economy here. So now I would like to introduce our 3 panelists, and each of these gentlemen will spend a few minutes just talking about different areas of their expertise for us. I will start with Kevin Valley, and Kevin, you are supposed to be talking about sealing and placing value in creative brands and businesses. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, everybody. So the theme of today is ideas empowered. All right, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about ideas. You see, the unfortunate reality with ideas is that ideas by themselves, they don't have much value. Ideas, they're as valuable as the benefit they create or the problems they solve for your customers when they're executed. And in addition to that, ideas only become true intellectual property when they're formalized as assets. So I want you to remember that ideas don't have value, assets do. So what is an asset? Many of us may have taken accounting 101, and we understand an asset is anything in your business that makes a process more efficient. So be it your machinery, your plant equipment, your computers, anything that automates a process or streamlines it so that you could be able to produce more products at once. But I want to offer a second definition of an asset. A business asset is anything that would still be valuable if you and your senior team disappeared. So for instance, you would see that Prince has been gone, say 5-6 years now, yet his estate was recently valued conservatively at 156 million US dollars. So I want you to think more broadly about assets, right? Think about your pitch decks, your business plans, recorded videos like this one, written guides and manuals for your team. These are things that that in your absence, your business, your practice, whatever it is that you are building can continue. Now we get into the formal types of assets. So like the trademarks for your brands that you have built, the patents for your technology, for your innovation, trade secrets that enable your business to create or deliver your product or service in a manner that is better, faster, or cheaper than your competition. A very easy example we can think of is KFC. KFC's 11 herbs and spices. Now, I don't know the 11 herbs and spices, but I've had a lot of KFC in my lifetime. Also think about customer relationships. Now, we want to be careful and think about customer relationships that our business has and not those that are just personal to us. Because again, value is also something that is transferable. So if an investor were to invest in your business, or if an acquirer were to purchase your business, they'd want to be able to benefit from that same value. And if those relationships are personal to you, that is not necessarily that transferable. Now, in thinking about scaling, we want to think about partnerships, right? So those distribution partnerships, your funding partners, your investors or your bankers, your brand partners that enhance the value of your brand. Also, the product partners that enhance the value of your product. So a very good example of a partnership would be Rihanna and LVMH, or Louis Vuitton, Moet and Hennessy. So you'll see that the Fenty brand has essentially made Rihanna a billionaire. Her net worth as of August was $1.7 billion, and $1.4 billion of that is due to Fenty, where the remaining 270 odd million is due to music sales. So that in itself shows that the difference between Rihanna being there to perform at stages and whatnot, and having her product on shelves for us to buy. So that said, your goal as an entrepreneur, business owner, creator, or whatnot, is to try and build as many assets as you can within your business. Essentially build an ecosystem of assets within your business, because assets add value. Before we get into the next speaker, I just want to give you guys an idea of my own, in which I've come up with, called the fundamentals or the foundation of value. So it spells out the word value is V-A-L-U-E. The V is for validity of your market position and competitive advantage, right? That adds value to your business. Your A is for your activity. So what is your cash flow generation? How are you attracting customers? How do you target customers? And you get those recurring revenues generated. L, longevity, right? Your business planning. How are you thinking long-term about your business? How is your succession planning for your business? U is for utility. How useful is your business, or how useful is the information provided about your business to investors, to the public, the shareholders? Do you know your numbers within your business? Do you know how much revenue your business is generating at a point in time, the expenses, the profits? Are you ready to face investors? Can you show how you can generate a return for yourself as well as for external investors? And the E is for efficiency. That speaks to your systems, your policies, your procedures. So think of your information technology, your business continuity plan in the event that there's a disaster in your business. Can the business survive without you? Your risk management controls. So with that, I am going to pass it along to the next speaker, and I look forward to the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'd like to invite Gerard Thomas now to give his brief presentation.
Hi, folks. Gerard Thomas here. I am the head of innovation at Agostini's Limited, and I'm the founder of Launch Rocket. I don't know. I want to say, well, I didn't have a specific presentation I wanted to talk about, but what I want to talk about is what I'm excited to hear. I came in this morning listening, trying to learn more about creativity. I have a little creative bone in my body, but listening to what Dr. Camacho has created, I am extremely, extremely excited. And to piggyback off of what Kevin said, there's so much value to be created here. I mean, an amazing amount of value. And for those persons who haven't explored NFTs, you know, I understood the other doctor's description of the 1%ers who are generating lots and lots of revenue. But cryptocurrency over the last few years has generated so much wealth globally, right? Before, where wealth was concentrated so much around specific geographies. So the San Francisco's, the New York, the Englands, Israel, certain areas. Cryptocurrency has given so much the opportunity for people anywhere around the globe to generate that level of revenue or certain level of revenue. And when I listened to that, I just listened to his explanation with the cricket. I just saw just so much value, and everything that Kevin just touched on in terms of describing the different letters of value. I'm just excited, and I hope in this journey of creating this NFT for the Caribbean that we could really think about the opportunities to create magnificent value and wealth for people, for those who are able to maybe buy and sell. Now, I don't know the specifics of it, but I just see it just being a transformative project, and I'm really excited about it. I think from my side, you know, what I would have come in and really speak about was really like, how do you identify ideas? How do you identify opportunities? And I think ideas come from two major views. One is either there's a problem that you want to solve, or there's an opportunity that you want to take advantage of. And I looked at listening to the speakers this morning and thinking more about the creative industry. There's a large portion that is around what you feel and bringing that out, right? So creatives have this context of, oh, I'm imagining this and I want to create it because it's a God-given instinct that they have. Just others just don't, right? So creatives, they have that natural talent. And as I was listening, I'm like, how can I explain, well, how to strategize and make sure that you are capturing something, but also making sure that you get some value in it, right? Before you go to the stage of scalability, etc. So I came up with this acronym, and I think it's called FEEL, right? And I wrote that down while I'm listening to the conversation. It's called FEEL, So the part is about 2 or 3 extra L's that are added to it. So in the entrepreneurial world, especially, take out the creativity part. We like to tell entrepreneurs, you know, you want to look for problems, right? If you look for problems that you can solve, it's easier to make money. It's a little more difficult to tell creatives that because they're given a God-given talent to feel. So I think in the creative space, I think you should feel. If you're not in the creative space, forget feel, we'll do the part. So when you feel, you see opportunity, you want to create this vision, whether it's clothing, whether it's making products, whatever it is, you get that vision in your mind and then you try to replicate that vision. But the first L after feel is really looking, right? Looking for opportunities and still looking for people where your product from your feeling can solve someone's problem. So if someone, I'm thinking about an entrepreneur I helped the other day, if you want to make a tea, right, and you're so fascinated about how this tea tastes and the color, etc., but now what do you want to find? You want to look for tea drinkers. You want to look for tea connoisseurs, people who have that, or maybe someone who needs tea for healthy living, right? You want to look for opportunities. Too many times I see creatives feel and try to sell but they're not looking for that market to go after, right? The second L is to listen. And that listening is when you're testing your product and you give your samples to other people, you need to listen to your customers and stop trying to sell your product. In my space right now, we're developing something that's very secret, can't say, but we're developing something. And one of the things we talk about is, you know, the customers telling us what they want. And I had with my team, I said, you know, we were creating these ad concepts. And one of the customers gave us feedback about our product on a report. And I said, these are the words we want in our ad. All customers will tell us what to do. Too many times we feel and we try to sell and we're not listening, right? And the last L is to learn. And I that L struck me because I was listening to two doctors talk about NFTs. And I remember my first, you know, I've been hearing NFTs are into the crypto space. You know, I like my Solana and Ethereum, etc. And started to go a little bit in the NFTs, and I saw this NFT, Degenerative Apes, right? So they came out after Bored Apes. And I was looking at it, and I remember when they were like at 13 Solana, and I'm like, what can I do with this? What does NFT thing comes about? I just don't understand it. And then, of course, it went from 13 to Solana to 100 Solana. And Solana was moving at almost over $100 at that point in time. And I'm like, I should have bought that $13 Solana and not just wait, right? But so now I'm in this process of learning. So, you know, I dived in, I went and bought a NFT from from Matrix, one of these guys. And I'm trying to experiment and learn. I'm trying to find a time where I could learn. I have these online courses that I want to learn and understand, because the learning helps you see things differently. It helps you look at opportunities differently. But I'm not going to take up too much time, but if there's one thing I want you to get away from my advice is to continue feeling, but add a few L's to the end. So that's all feel. All right. Thank you very much, Laura. I pass it back on to you, Laura.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gerard. And as we're talking about NFTs and crypto, I would like to introduce Mark Pereira, who's going to tell us a little bit about what he does. Mark is one of the leading people driving the NFT growth in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. So Mark, tell our audience a bit about what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the intro, Laura. Lovely to be on the panel today. So what we do at Zed is I've come back after working with a bunch of global organizations who are leading in terms of blockchain development and ecosystems and also products, is how can I bring this innovative technology to Trinidad and lower the barrier to entry? One very important thing to note with technology is that good technology makes our lives easier and more powerful. And in that way, we're able to like upskill ourselves, or make ourselves, have better opportunity than the person next to us. And that's when you jump into an innovative technology. Problem with innovative technologies a lot of the time is the barrier to entry is a lot higher, but also the value that you get from it is a lot higher. So at Zed, we're basically trying to lower those barriers to entry. And we do that in a number of ways, because we have been a part of a few exercises in Trinidad to see how we could tackle creative industries with innovative technologies. We built a augmented reality application with a blockchain wallet built in. But what we're realizing is that we don't have an ecosystem to support creative industries in the technology realm. So basically what we're coming at Trinidad with, I'll just give you a short intro into what Zed is. This will help me run through it really quickly. So Zed, we've worked with some of the biggest organizations out there, like a little company in Trinidad working for the big names, Binance, Dapper Labs, who, as mentioned before in one of the talks, launched NBA Top Shot, Consensus, a big organization out of New York, who's built and helped lay the foundations for things like MetaMask, and Gnosis, and then Sigma Prime, who's leading Ethereum 2.0 implementer, and then DAOstack, who was at the time one of the leading DAO implementers. So these are a part of our portfolio of companies we've been really proud to work with. And essentially there's three pillars I'm going to talk about. There's WAM, there's the Innovation Lab, and there's education, and along with that, a few pro bono work. So WAM is essentially our platform to get people introduced into digital money, because there's not really a massive proliferation of mobile payments or mobile money in Trinidad to have people kind of jump into that realm, to even start exploring the possibilities of what digital money could bring, let alone cryptocurrency. So this is our step to make sort of like a digitized money, to make it easy for people to get into the space and make money move freely, and just see how that can benefit an economy. Next is we have a software development bootcamp where we educate youths on innovative technology or just industry standard technology, and skill them with the mindsets to become an MVP in their organization. So we teach them, React, we teach them blockchains. A few of these guys have launched their own NFTs, and just being around an innovative company right here rooted in Trinidad to see how it is that we operate and how you can take that to the next organization that you move into, and also start to be, some sort of junior thought leader moving forward. The next thing is an ecosystem needs to be built in Trinidad. We don't really have a technology ecosystem. We don't have networking events, startup nights. We don't have a lot of hackathons. We don't have a co-working space, like a grassroots co-working space where people could come together and work and exchange ideas and cross-pollinate and collaborate. So really what we're trying to do, we have our first implementation right here where I'm sitting. It's an art studio next to a co-working space. We are bringing together technologists under the same umbrella, and we're collaborating on solutions, and we're helping each other grow. And it's a very different mind shift to the traditional mindset that we have in the Caribbean, which is, I have my idea, I want to protect it, I don't want to tell anyone. We take the complete opposite approach of like, just be completely expressive about your ideas. Because somebody's going to ask you questions about it, so that it keeps refining it, and then you can go off and launch. Nobody's gonna take your idea and run with it better than you know how to. So this is just, again, a space where people can come together and work on different ideas and just be around other similar minds. One of the next things that we worked on with Anya is the Wildflower Project. This is a pro bono project that we do with her, and it's essentially how do we lower the barrier to entry for creatives or people just looking to get into the NFT space. So we do a lot of educational podcasts like we do on the Instagram Live here. And then these are called Wallet and Wine. So we've talked about everything from how to set up a wallet, and we even launched an NFT of Anya's live on this Instagram Live. So we show you exactly how to do it. And we try to demystify all of these all of these innovative technologies that can empower you by just showing you exactly how to do it. So yeah, I'll stop sharing there. And that's pretty much what we've been up to in this space, and that's how we're aiming at tackling the problem of empowering creators and other individuals to get into these innovative spaces.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. So now we're going to just go into a little discussion about some of the things we've heard so far. And I want to encourage all of you who are listening to please send your questions, and we'll have the panel answer them as we go along. So I want to start with Kevin and Gerard. I'm so glad both of you started talking about ideas, because that was really that was my first question. I remember some time ago talking to a coach about an idea I had an idea that I had. And he asked me, how do you plan to make money? And I said, well, I was stumped. So he said, well, if you're not planning to make money, then basically you have a hobby. And there's so many creatives, as Gerard said, we have ideas. We are filled with ideas. We're always coming up with the next great thing. And, not really treating it as a business, because as Gerard said, it's about emotion first. We put our whole heart and soul into this thing. I could sing, I could dance, I could make wonderful candles. It's such an emotional thing for us that the last thing we think about is, well, how do I make this a business? We're just happy to do it. So I want to ask you both, and I know, Kevin, you touched on this. How do you, if you could go a little deeper into how do you determine that your idea is actually a viable business? Because so much of your ego and emotion is wrapped up into it that you may not, want to, you know, you might have to take out some things, put in some things, and then it might end up not being exactly what you envisioned. And also, it seems for a lot of people, because, you know, I'm in a lot of creative spaces, when you have an actual tangible product to sell, it might seem a little easier to understand. But if you're selling as an experience, or how do you then measure that and sell that? So if you go address that, Kevin, you can go first.
All right, thanks, Laura. Okay, so what I'll tackle here is just that whole idea development, and then I'll touch a little bit on customer targeting once you've developed your idea. All right, so I think the beautiful thing here is that we are all unique, right? You know, so I spent most of my career in corporate offices or whatnot, and yet, you know, I started a podcast where, you know, I'm sitting down interviewing people about business. So I combine my own little private desires of being a media personality, although I can't sing, dance, and, you know, I'm very disadvantaged in that side of the brain in terms of where talents were distributed. But I've found the marriage of my skills in, you know, research, business development, connecting with people or whatnot, and I was able to start something there. So what I would implore people to do, just sort of look within at first. So think about what are your personal or professional achievements? What are problems you're great at fixing, or any special talents that you have, right? Any special experiences that you have that are unique to you. Any specific results or outcomes that you're known for. Do you have a passionate focus or so that you geek out on? What do you already have out in the space? What published content do you have? Do you have any podcasts, any articles out? Have you been featured in the media before? Or do you have access to a specific network? Have you worked with previous brands, any specific accreditation or anything like that? So you know where I'm going with this, right? So then you take that marriage of your ideas and then you start to think, okay, who should be the target audience or the target customers for this specific idea I have, right? And I always advocate for 3 particular pillars here. 1, who can you create the most amount of value for? Now, see, the problem is a lot of folks want to try to appease everyone, but we need to be focused with who we want to target, who we want to create value for. Secondly, now if your idea involves having to collaborate with folks or having to serve customers, which most ideas do, who do you enjoy working with, or who do you enjoy serving? Right? Who do you already have access to? What sort of clientele do you already have access to? And the third, and which I think is possibly the most important, especially as creatives and small businesses trying to make it out here, who is willing and able to pay a premium, not just regular price, a premium for your good and service, for your good or service, or for that experience that you want to create for your customers. So I think that in terms of that introspection for your idea development, and then being very, very focused on who you want to target as customers, I think that's an excellent place to start and to monetize on your idea, and then you can start working on enhancing value and whatnot. Gerard, I don't know what you want to add to that.
Just now, before you come, Eliana has to leave shortly, so I just want to get a question to her before she goes. Eliana, we're talking about the creative economy and data. How important is data to the creative economy? And especially, and we're talking like at the macro level, government level, and even at the individual level, how important is data and how can it be applied to help people in the creative economy? We're not hearing you, Eliana.
Okay, thank you, Laura, for the question. Data is extremely important for the creative economy, specifically to have, to influence public policy, as I said before, and to have the tools to show how much creative economy impacts development. So just to briefly back up on this. Just on the onset of the of COVID-19, we did a really comprehensive macro and micro research together with OEI, Mercosur, Cultural, UNESCO, and CEGIB. So with other 4 multilateral organizations, not only focusing on Latin America and the Caribbean, but also in Ibero-America. And we measured the impact of COVID on the creative sector. We have a lot of information on that I would like to share with you afterwards and with all the audience, but I will just share like 3 main data points with you. So we've seen that more than 2.6 million jobs in the cultural and creative sector were affected throughout Ibero-America because of COVID-19. We were able to identify which were the hardest hit sectors within the creative industries, which were entertainment activities, of course, handicrafts, and the arts. We saw that there was a huge level, everything was exacerbated, of course, after the pandemic. And we've seen that there was a lot of informality in the creative economy. And in one of our conversations that we had with Camille Selvon from Trinidad and Tobago, what we also saw that there was a huge gap between the talent that we have in the country, in the Caribbean, of course, in general, but specifically talking to her in Trinidad and Tobago, and the skill sets that were required for instance, for the audiovisual sector. So this data in particular allowed us to know that we can bridge that gap and prepare our creative artists, to fill that gap and have the skills to be ready for this, post-pandemic era and digitalized world, so to speak. And we also saw that innovation and digitalization have also had a very positive turnaround. We've seen a lot of innovation and a lot of the creation of new business models. And just to finish off, I want to share with you 3 examples from Trinidad and Tobago that I got to learn through this study that we did, through this data collection. First one was, as I mentioned, Anima Caribe Animation Festival. They were able to create this, immersive world of virtual reality and increase almost 500% their audience. So the second example that we have is the one facilitated by the Creative Tech Lab, which is what our colleagues at the IDB from the Competitiveness, Innovation and Technology Division did, creating this methodology to facilitate this project. The project is called Artist ID, which is an app that allows Trinidad and Tobago artists to increase their visualization and hiring possibilities through an online directory of professional creatives. And then the third one that I got to learn is called Antilia World. I don't know if you know about this, but it is from Trinidad and Tobago. And it's basically like a virtual island developed by a company that creates experiences from carnivals from Trinidad and Tobago. So these are 3 examples of new business models that came about after the pandemic. We were able to gather this data that, it's not only everything downside, everything negative. There were also some positive turnarounds from the pandemic. So this is one of the biggest things that we were able to do in data collection right at the onset of the pandemic. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you, Eliana. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Gerard, coming off of something Eliana said just now, talking about the pandemic and the effect that it had on the creative economy, so many people lost jobs. Going back to that concept of when you're developing an idea, has it now, we saw so many creatives really just out of jobs because of the pandemic. Is it now imperative to, when you're conceptualizing a business, to think of periods like this when you may not be able to conduct business as usual? And how do you build that into your whole business framework?
That is such a great question. I think, yeah, now it clearly, especially for entrepreneurs or coming entrepreneurs in this generation, and maybe the next 2 or 3, they will remember clearly this experience and be able, and will try to consider, okay, well, how do I protect my business? I think it is a difficult question to answer because ultimately it depends on the stage of the entrepreneur. But I think, you know, from my experience, the entrepreneurs that I'm looking at, these early starters, the entrepreneurs who have ideas and may have started to get a few customers, I think it's about being resilient, being able to try to identify, okay, well, this didn't work, what can, right? It's being able to look at the spectrum of okay, what's the worst could happen, and what can I do now to be able to try something new? How can I change my business model? And a lot of the times what I've realized, business models are just really borrowed from other places. And, you know, that goes back to that whole feel a little thing that I made up. It's looking and listening and being open to a lot of different types of businesses, even things that you're not interested in, right? Even if you're interested in like, all right, so you might be in arts and creatives, but topics that you just not, or industries that you just really don't care about, airline industry or whatever it is, right? You may want to take a deep dive and say, okay, let me learn a little bit about this industry and how they make money. Let me see how these other people make money. And it goes back to even, let me see how the NFT market, how they make money. And that kind of gives you the context now of being able to say, okay, oh, I could try something new. I could turn this around. Or maybe I could, you know, maybe this is an opportunity to really add technology onto my business, right? In the food space, you know, I'm looking at it, and yes, a lot of businesses have been impacted in the food space, right? And part of that kind of falls into the little creative space. But if you look at technology and you want to embrace it and say, okay, well, let me see how can I do it? What are the craziest things that I could do? And the reason why I mentioned crazy is because there's a podcast that I heard from the founder of LinkedIn. Oh my gosh. Anyway, he'll come back to me just now. And he talked about how Airbnb, when they started and the things that they did, right? And one of the things the Airbnb has is they have a scale of experience. So when they started to get into the experience business, they had this scale. And so the scale was out of 1 out of 10. But they had to create sample experiences that were beyond 10, so like 11, 12, 13. So a 13 experience out of 10 would be, you land into, you say you're traveling to Toronto, right? And you land in Toronto, and, you know, because it's you are so amazing, you know, Michael Jackson comes back alive and he's at the airport now getting ready to sing a hit for you, and you have people cheering you along. These unrealistic things, right? There's a friend of mine from Trinidad. He started a business, some Uber type of business in Chicago. And he had, you know, he and his partners, like once in a while, once a month, would talk about doing delivery, right? Last mile delivery. And they would talk about teleportation. Like, how do you teleport a product from A to B? It's crazy. It's radical. It's way out there. It's not possible in today's world. But just by you thinking about it, it pushes your mind to think, okay, what can I do between that 10 score and 13 score? That's literally ridiculous. But there may be 1 or 2 things, and it starts to push your mind of what's possible. So I think that type of thinking will really help entrepreneurs who have been challenged by this time and want to be resilient and want to have that type of planning, right? If you're a little more advanced, you could get into, what do you call this type of planning, where you Kevin can help me here, where you prepare for the future for all worst case scenarios. I forget what you call it. That'll come back to me too. but that's my advice in terms of being able to look at, just think out of the box, but you have to push yourself to do that.
Right. So it's staying nimble, staying open-minded, being flexible, ready to pivot. That you know, the word of the pandemic, being ready to pivot at a moment's notice. And I want to bring Mark here because one of the things we've seen a lot of creatives do is turn to NFTs. We've seen a lot of artists turning to NFTs in order to supplement their income during the pandemic. So Mark, could you talk a little bit about what you've seen, how people are using NFTs? Because I'm in a couple of NFT groups with you. It's growing daily. There's so many people excited. There's so many people, musicians and artists jumping into NFTs and really finding value in it for their brands. Can you talk a bit about how you've seen NFTs work for the creative sector?
Yeah, I definitely think COVID has definitely helped us propel into the digital realm, and especially creatives who are using digital tools already. So to NFT anything is really to have a digital file, and then you put the digital file on the blockchain. To put it simply. And what we've seen already is Chantel out of Barbados being one of the first Black female artists to push a song as an NFT and connect directly to her customers. What she's saying after she launched her NFT with a song is that she had a lot closer relationship with her fans through that, and a lot more meaningful. And because she was able to refine the margins of between her and her record label, which there was none because she launched her own NFT in her own song, she was not only she was not only making meaningful money, but connecting on a deeper level, on a closer level with a subset of her fans that she felt were really true fans. We're seeing Nicholas Huggins, who is a very well-known designer who's done designs for, you name it, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Kesty Band, and I know I'm missing a few, but he's now pivoted into, and really has been one of the most creative in terms of how he launches them, and in terms of the way he goes about the business around launching his NFTs, has really honed in on his space. And he's allowed himself as a graphic designer to move into the sale of his NFTs, whereas before he would have had to create a digital file and then print out those physical prints and then take those to market. Now we can just sell those digital files online and build up an ecosystem and a customer base around it. And I think one of the most important things about some of the work that Nick's doing, it's really rooted in our culture, and it's really rooted in it's true to nature. It's based on the natural environment, some of his favorite places in Trinidad. So he's putting creativity, he's putting culture, and he's putting also tourism on the map through his art. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that NFT is doing, is really just refining through all of the, a lot of the kind of unnecessary things that you need to put into your work, and just saying, okay, well, what's true to you, and what do you think is value? What do you think that customers will buy? And then you launch that NFT. We've also seen Anya with her Wildflower NFTs. Anya, which was really beautiful to see. She has a fashion label called Wildflower. Some of the dresses that were made in the Wildflower collection were by Venezuelan refugees. And then Anya's now taken a really empowering model of employing women who not necessarily had financial inclusion or opportunity, and then taking them directly into the innovative realm by launching a digitized dress in the metaverse on Decentraland. So that connection and that dissolving of barriers in this space, I think, is one of the most amazing things to see. And exactly what we're seeing is happening is it's lowering the barrier to entry, it's lowering the barrier to your customer. And we're even now through the MVP program seeing some of the youths that are talented graphic designers launching their own NFTs and selling things online and making hundreds of US just selling one print. So I think there's if you look at it through different lenses, it's really beautiful to see what's going on in the NFT space in Trinidad.
Yes,
and the wider Caribbean.
Yes, and one of the things that I love about the whole NFT movement is that it's a community. It's a real community. Everybody leans on each other for advice. And we are talking about startups here, gentlemen. Can that sense of community be applied to entrepreneurs, anybody who starts in a business? Because not everybody has the means, first of all, to develop and expand and scale up their business. Not everybody has the expertise. They may not know where to find the expertise. Kevin, what resources are there for people who need that community to help them build their business?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, there are programs like what Gerard founded called Launch Rocket. They are accelerator programs and incubator programs or whatnot. But what I would also implore people to think about is partnerships, right? Because the fact of the matter is that there's somebody else somewhere that woke up with exactly what you need to take your business to the next level, to do what you need to get done. And again, similarly with you, you have something that somebody else really needs. So yeah, partnerships. So I mean, I spoke earlier about different types of partnerships, distribution partnerships. So let's say I'm a big brand, and let's say I have a product, and I need to get a brand in front of associated with the product. So I reach out to someone like a Rihanna or so, and I need distribution. So I reach out to LVMH, right? Who already has that distribution and everything put in place already. And I'm just the product. I'm just the guy mixing the perfume or the cologne in my lab. So already, just by making those partnerships, I already have scale. I already have such a bigger market to address. So yeah, I always implore people to think about partnerships, think strategically about partnerships, and make sure that when you are approaching partners, that you are also bringing value. It's not just a favor, right? That you have 2 or 3 things in place. So distribution, brand, product.
Okay, I have a question here from, thank you, Kevin. I have a question here from Alexandra Gani, and she would like to know, how would local artists protect themselves from potential copyright infringements? I guess this is related to the NFTs. Is the onus on the artist to upload and mint their work before it can be stolen and sold as an NFT? Mark?
Yeah, I think when you move into the digital realm, it's it's a lot harder to protect your work. I mean, there's things like watermarking. There's different ways to skin the cat, but one of the things that blockchain technology allows is timestamping. So once you've created your work and you put it on the blockchain, there's a timestamp that is unhackable. It's what is known as immutable, meaning you cannot change it. If people could change things on the blockchain, well, like I'd probably be a gazillionaire, or the blockchain would have no value at all. So when you upload your digital file to the blockchain, it's timestamped, and you can prove that is the original because I uploaded that NFT on the blockchain. People can like right click and save and then like launch another NFT, but then it's very easily provable that's not the original. That's maybe not the original file. What you could do is you can also watermark the NFT and upload it if you are kind of scared of even approaching it that way. Watermark the NFT, and then when the NFT is purchased, it's what's known as unlockable content. So you can then have unlockable content that is the original file, and then that is sent to the person who buys the NFT. So yeah, it's really just about thinking of different ways to prove the authenticity or to issue authenticity after.
Okay, great, thank you. We have just about 5 minutes, and I want to find out, Gerard, this is something most creators are concerned about. How do you attract funding? And how do you begin to approach a venture capitalist? What do you need to have in place to even want an investor to look at you?
First thing you have to do is go to Kevin, all right? So
I know this is Kevin's forte, but I want to give you an opportunity to try to find it, make it equitable.
No
right?
No problem. So I think this, again, it depends on the stage you're at, and I'm going to say this. I want to try to answer your question and say this. I think too many entrepreneurs try to get funding first, or try to get funding too early, or should I say large amounts of funding too early, before they're at the stage where they could be of demand, right? One of the questions I think you asked, and this is before Ellie came in, and you asked this question to Kevin, and I was like, one of the things you want an entrepreneurs need to see is demand, right? And if there's a form of demand, then you could piggyback on that, try to understand the customer. As Kevin said, have narrow focus on your customer, and then try to scale as you grow, right? Then you try to get new customers. But I do think that if entrepreneurs could really focus on, yes, we do need money, and in a country like Trinidad, it's difficult, right? I think when I lived away for a while. I came back as a little naive to, you need some little bit of funding, and you need support, and you need mentorship. You know, one of the questions you asked earlier was, I think you also need people to protect you, right? Going off a little topic, but what you really need is to really get your business model right and be able to say, okay, this is what works for this customer, and I could generate this revenue. Let me tweak different things. Let me try different things to see if I could grow revenue and grow the customer. And once you have that, now you have something that you have leverage. I think a lot of the times I see entrepreneurs going for investors and they don't have leverage. There's no leverage to say, you know what, I can walk away from you because I know my business has value. Yes, I would like to scale it in 2 years, but you know what, if I have to take organic growth, I will grow it to the same level in 5 years, right? Of course, when you have that value, you have confidence. And you have that confidence now to even have a different conversation. Even if you're borrowing money from the bank, you have that confidence to have that level of conversation. So I would say, so that's the first part. And the second part is, in terms of getting ready, it's about, having your financials in place, having your governance in place, being well structured, being structured in a way that allows them to understand your documents, understand your value. Don't hide anything. Be real. You have loans, personal, fine, let them know. And I think there's a level of openness that we miss sometimes in our culture, a fear of failure, not just only on the business side, but how people perceive us. And it is valid in some cases. And yes, the wrong eyes do perceive us incorrectly. But hopefully within that journey, you can find the right people, right? I love what Mark, when you started to talk about the things in Z, I was like, wow, these are a lot of the things that Launch Rocket wanted to kind of do back in the days, but I'm happy that somebody else is doing it, right? And that whole journey towards building value, I think is important. And once you have value, I must say one thing. Sometimes you have value you don't even realize because you feel too much, and I have gone through that. You feel too much, and you need people who are the side of you, like is a spouse. My wife is one who's like, listen, you're charging too little, right? Or mentor to give you that guidance. But once you have value, you're able to sell it. Once you could identify it and clearly show it, you could be able to sell it to an investor, and they may add more value or they may criticize your value, which is okay. It's okay, right? But you try to create value first. That allows you to have that easier conversation with an investor. And then you go to Kevin.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gerard. Unfortunately, gentlemen, we are out of time. I want to thank you, Gerard Thomas, Kevin Valley, and Mark Pereira for sharing your expertise and ideas with us today. I hope all of those listening were able to take away some nuggets of information that they could apply to their own entrepreneurial journeys. I want to say thank you to Ideas emPowered for having us, and do enjoy the rest of the session.
All right, thank you. Take care, folks. Bye.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you to all of our panelists that were part of that discussion: Eliana, Prada, Kevin Valley, Gerard Thomas, and Mark Pereira. Just for your information, Mark is also going to be joining us in our fourth and final session for today. So once again, thank you to our sponsors, our partners, so to speak, for making it happen: Trinidad and Tobago Intellectual Property Office, Modcom, Quantum Business Solutions, Carnicon, the Communications Department of the Attorney General's Office, Media 21, Anthony Burnley, Khalil Mohammed, and Eventology Trinidad and Tobago Limited.